Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and a Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes. We're bringing you a pre-record because Aaron is off yet again on holiday and I am moving house. So both of us are not in work this week. We thought we'd bring you a very special episode to make up for that. And of course, it is the international break, so there's not too much going on. And we've been planning this episode for a wee while. I'd say 6 weeks, 2 months, thereabouts. So it's been going on in the background. Finally, we are bringing it to you guys. We've just been discussing what the title is, and we're not overly sure of how to best sell you the podcast this episode, other than it being absolutely brilliant. The title we've come up with, and you will kind of get what we're talking about. It is the best Newcastle United starting 11 made up of concrete transfer rumours. Not the most sexy of titles, but I think it gets the point across. We're excited for this. People in the office who've heard us banging on about this podcast are excited for this, particularly our colleague Daniel Hall, who says he's only subscribed to the podcast to hear this episode, and he's been asking every week, where is it? Well, Daniel, here it is. There are a few rules that I know I've stuck by, although talking to Aaron and reminding him of these rules this week, I don't think he stuck by them, but we're not having any rumours post the takeover because let's be honest, it's been a little bit wild. And they have to be concrete links. They have to have been in, the Chronicle, the Journal, and other media outlets. They're not off Twitter. They're not off Facebook. They're not just my mate Bob down the post office said. They have to be concrete links. We've got a team each, and at the end, we will make the best team. And hopefully, it's a team that will be well liked by you guys. And of course, you want you guys on social media, on YouTube, listen on the podcast channel to get in touch with us as well, and maybe even create your own and let us know what you think about our choices. Aaron, how much hard work has it been to get to this starting 11?
The blood, sweat, and tears that I've put into making this 11 the best Newcastle United 11 of all those signings. I was even up this morning early making some last-minute tweaks, getting some last-minute changes to the starting 11. A few players very unfortunate to miss out on a place in my team, but that's the brutal nature of being a top football manager. So
You see,
yeah,
this team, Aaron, my team has been picked since I first floated this idea to you back in the back end of January was when I think we first came up with the idea. So my team's been picked since then. This team would win countless titles, I reckon. The team I've got. Are you excited to get into it?
I'm really excited. I really hope that this doesn't flop after we've built it up so much. And honestly, the amount of players that I've picked, I could probably have a full squad of 18. I've got a lot of honourable mentions who just missed out.
So
Let's.
before we start with the goalkeeper, let's just kind of get into how we've picked the team because I think
Okay.
we may have picked it on slightly different, with slightly different reasons. I've gone with a team that I think would be best with chemistry, not just literally picked out the best players and try to slot them in because you can have teams of individuals, but they're not teams. Is the point? How have you picked yours? Have you gone for the name and the name only?
There's a lot of big names in there. There's a couple of, I will preface and get the excuses in early. There's a couple of positions that I just could not find really decent links for. So I'm not too happy with the goalkeeper. The right back was a very last minute shout, and maybe the left back as well. But I think the spine of the team is absolutely fantastic. The wingers are world class. I've probably gone for the names, the big superstar names, rather than how well they'll play with each other.
See, I've built a team, mate. I've built a team. It's not about individuals.
No, I've gone for a team of individuals, but I think put them all together and you would have a pretty special 11. If these 11 had all played for Newcastle United at the same time or at a similar period, they would have won the lot. I'll say that.
And have we got a manager picked as well?
Oh, I haven't picked a manager, no.
No, neither have I. And I think originally we had discussed picking a
Yeah, we
manager.
did.
So maybe our listeners and our viewers can pick the manager for us. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know which manager strongly linked to Newcastle United pre the takeover you would like to see in charge of this team that we will pick together collectively at the end of the show. Formation wise, Aaron, what we've gone for?
I went for 4-4-2. I nearly went 3 at the back because I couldn't find any full backs, but I've gone 4-4-2, but I've gone with a holding midfielder and an attacking midfielder in the middle and 2 wingers.
Yeah, same here. So that's all right with me. I'll let you go first. You tell me the goalkeeper that you've gone for.
Okay, now as we were discussing yesterday in the office, the goalkeeper was a really, really tough pick for me. I couldn't really find any massive links to big players. And I very, very nearly went with Arsenal's David Seaman, but I made a very late choice to get rid of him. And I've actually gone for Pepe Reina. Very, very heavily linked. Not when he was at his peak, not when he was at Liverpool, but when he was at Napoli and Benitez joined the club. He really, really wanted him to join. It didn't happen. He decided to stay at Napoli. So I think these are my weak spots. I think goalkeeper and fullbacks, I think you might beat me on, but the rest I'm confident. So I've gone for Spain's Pepe Reina as my goalkeeper.
He was linked consistently under Rafa Benitez. I mean, he'd had a fantastic time at Liverpool, hadn't he? I don't think it ended too well in the end, but still a legend nonetheless. But yeah, it seemed every transfer window was all about, could Rafa Benitez sign Pepe Reina? They say he was at Napoli. He ended up on Aston Villa on loan. Remember that? AC Milan as well. But a top goalkeeper, a big fan of the short sleeved jerseys he would wear. I think that makes him stand out in a way. And a man who's won pretty much everything there is to win. Didn't win the Premier League, but he did win the Bundesliga. Did win the Coppa Italia as well with Napoli. So not a bad start. I've gone for a goalkeeper who is well known in the Premier League, and I think we also have to say as well that the idea, at least in my head, is that we are picking players based on how good they were at the time they were linked.
Yeah, that's what I've
Because
done. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, because it wouldn't be fair to say, they were linked to this player who then became an absolute legend. Because so we were talking about signing the players for Newcastle United in this dream team, and then being as good as they were when they were actually linked,
Yeah.
not what they later became. So this one, the goalkeeper I've gone for, it's actually a bit more than a link. In his words, he signed for Newcastle United.
Oh, I know
It
who
was
this is, and
Brad
I nearly went
Friedel.
for him. Mhm.
Brad Friedel, 1994. He was playing for a varsity team over in America, Bruins men's soccer team, and Kevin Keegan brought him over, wanted to sign him. And there's a quote that I've got from Brad Friedel a few years back, and he said, "I actually signed for Newcastle in 1994, but I wasn't able to attain a work permit, so I went from Newcastle to Brøndby, which is over in Norway or Sweden. Sorry, my geography's
Denmark,
not
I think. Yeah.
fantastic. Denmark, one of the Scandinavian countries. I was playing for the USA, but it didn't have an appeals process on the work permit, and you have to have played 75% of your national team's games over the last 2 years. When I had applied, I think I was 22, and I was number 2 at the World Cup and only had 50 or 60%. By the time I signed with Liverpool, which was a few years later, I had 75%. And obviously, Brad Friedel went on. I think he's actually got the most appearances as a goalkeeper, if I'm not mistaken, in the Premier League. Went on to be an absolute legend, brilliant shot stopper. And he probably would have been number 1 at Newcastle United during the entertainers era had he signed, because obviously they had Pavel Srnicek that went out and signed Shaka Hislop a few years after that. But, Pavel, great character, sorely missed. But I don't think he was ever a top class goalkeeper. And I think Brad Friedel coming in, I think he would have been number 1 for a long period of time, probably up until maybe they signed Shea Given. Maybe they wouldn't have needed to have signed Shea Given, which, it's them little bits in the universe which change. But yeah, Brad Friedel for me is my number 1.
Yeah, I really, really looked at Friedel and nearly went from it was between him, Seaman, and Reina. And I also saw loads of links to Peter Schmeichel before he went to Manchester United, but I just couldn't find the link at all. So loads of people talking about having a trial, but I couldn't go from. Friedel's a good shout. The only thing I'm thinking is back in 1994, playing for a varsity team. If that's when we're signing him, does he get in? But a very
He's
good
raw,
shout.
isn't he? He is raw. I give you that. But then people would say, well, Pepe Reina, was he coming towards the end of his
Exactly, yeah.
time? Was
They're
he
on
Premier
opposite
League
ends of the
standard?
scale, are they? Yeah.
Is a raw and Brad Friedel with plenty of potential, better than an age, and Pepe Reina. I mean, let us know in the comments who you would pick. I'm just gonna have a quick look at his time. So yeah, he went to Galatasaray actually, 95, 96, played 30 games that season, and then he moved to Liverpool. Never held down a first place at Liverpool, 11 games, 12 games. It wasn't until he went to Blackburn in the Championship, or the First Division as it was called back then, when he really started to make his mark. And then they were promoted to the Premier League 2001, 2002, and that's when he just set this, set the tone. I mean, 36, 37, 36, 38, 38, 38. I mean, he played a lot of times for Blackburn and then went to Aston Villa, held down, played every game in the 3 seasons he was at Aston Villa in the Premier League. So, top class goalkeeper. I would put forward that a raw Brad Friedel with potential. If Kevin Keegan wanted to sign him, and he was a man who knew about talent, he got very little wrong in the transfer market the first time around, did Keegan. That's good enough for me. Are you going to let me have Friedel, or are we going to have to argue to the death here?
We'll decide at the end. We'll pick at the
Okay,
end.
right, okay.
We'll pick at the
Right,
end.
right back then. Do you want to?
Okay, so but before I get started with this one, did you have real trouble finding a right back? Because I mean, this is scraping the barrel for me. This one.
I had one from the start in my mind. It wouldn't have been my first choice, but as we were quite stringent with the rules of proper links, proper outlets, it's someone I've gone with. And I have to admit, this is the one where I wasn't too certain, but actually looking back at the time that this person was linked, I don't think it would have been the worst signing, because he'd really built up a really good reputation and he was coming to the peak of his career. So I don't think it would have been the worst signing in the world. Should I just unveil the name?
Yeah, go for it. Go for yours.
So I've gone for Danny Mills.
Ooh,
Danny
okay.
Mills linked, in 2004. He actually moved to Manchester City on a free transfer signed by Kevin Keegan. Newcastle United made a late approach for him. He'd spent the season before this on loan at Middlesbrough, winning the League Cup. Now, he was 27 at the time of this move, and he'd made 141 appearances in a great Leeds United side. Obviously, they then hit financial trouble. He'd moved to Middlesbrough. Leeds were relegated, and they had to get him off the wage bill. And look, I get, as a pundit, he hasn't got many friends in the Newcastle United fan base. But at that time, he was probably one of the best right backs in the
Yeah,
country.
England international.
So, 2004, you're coming into the Souness era, just about there at Newcastle. Just trying to think who Newcastle had at that time. Aaron Hughes maybe been a little bit versatile, but had he moved out by then? But yeah, I think he would have been a very good sign on a free transfer, so that would have freed up the budget to go elsewhere. Like I say, 141 appearances in a Leeds side, which came very close to winning the Premier League title, gone well in Europe. One of those kind of unfortunate stories. I mean, we're recording this in the week that Forest had been deducted points. Leeds United kind of went on a similar kind of trajectory, didn't get points deducted, but did they? I don't think they did, but ended up being relegated and having a kind of a fire sale. But yeah, Danny Mills was a big part of that Leeds side. Then wins the League Cup with Middlesbrough. I think he would have been a superb signing, especially on a free as well.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. Don't hate it. I think it's going to be another tight one, because my player, and it's somebody, I must say, you did give me the inspiration for it yesterday. It's Mario Melchiot, as we were discussing yesterday. Now, Newcastle were linked with him in 2004, the same year that they were linked with Danny Mills. He turned down Newcastle and Middlesbrough after leaving Chelsea. I believe he went to Birmingham after that. Very, very good at Ajax, played over 100 games for Chelsea over 5 years, 40 games for the Netherlands, across all teams, youth and senior, and just a very, very solid operator. Now, I will admit, coming into this, I thought, right, I'm just gonna take right back as a free hit. I've lost it. Mario Melchiot's not going to win, but Mario Melchiot up against Danny Mills, I think, is closer than I anticipated. I think that's another tight battle. Two very, very decent Premier League players.
Well, I don't think it's. I mean, we're not really talking about world-class players. I mean, both great players in the Premier League, but if you were looking around and saying who would Newcastle want to centre right, but I don't think you get many fans picking either one as first choice. But as we say, we were struggling to find concrete links. So how old was Melchior at the time of that then?
Melchiot at the time he is now 47. That was 20 years ago. He's 27.
27, the same age as Danny Mills.
Yeah, he was on his way out at Chelsea. Obviously, Mourinho came in. He's pulled rank. And yeah, then he went on to Birmingham, Rennes in France, then had 3 seasons at Wigan playing 100 games, and then ended his career in Qatar.
It's
I think
going to
that's
be a
another
tight one,
close
isn't
one.
it?
I think that's another tight one.
It is. It's definitely a tight one. I mean, both good Premier League players. Yeah, that
But
is definitely
also,
going to be a tight one. Because I did
what?
consider Melchior, but there was
Yeah,
a reason I didn't go for him. And I can't quite remember what it was, but there was a
I
reason
think
in
I
that.
think if you look at the rest of my team and some of the names in it, I think Melchiot would look very out of place, as would Danny Mills, alongside some of the players that are probably going to get in this team. So
Okay, so
yeah,
Danny Mills versus Mario Melchior. Right. Into the centre-back positions.
I could have had 6 centre backs easily. I had
This
so
worries me.
many.
I think you're shooting for the moon here, and I've kind of gone for like the streetlights maybe. But we'll
I
see.
had I had so many centre backs that I found and thought that would have been brilliant, and I've got 4 written down here. I've picked my 2. My first one of the 2 is John Terry.
We
Now
see that doesn't
Newcastle
even need
will
explaining. I mean,
exactly.
one of the best
Well,
centre backs in
I'll
it.
give you a little bit of context as to when they were linked. I've got an article here from 2002. John Terry is ready to commit his long-term future at Chelsea, despite rumours linking him with a move to St James's Park. Newcastle will be linked with an £8 million move for the 21-year-old, but Terry is happy at Chelsea. Now, bear in mind, this is, as you say, a 21-year-old Terry, young, just up and coming. But even at 21, he's in that Chelsea team. He's thriving. He's on the cusp of England. It's a big
Right.
shout.
So just so you're talking, what are we talking? Like the summer of 2001, are we?
That
When's
is,
that?
it was 2002, and it was
So
um,
he hadn't held really. I mean, he played 33 times, 2001, 2002.
it was
Then had
November
played
2002 he was linked. So that it would have been
so
January 2003 was the next transfer window.
so he'd only played 20. He played 20 games in 2002, 2003, and then after that, obviously, he becomes a bit more regular. I guess, Aaron, in many ways, it's the same argument as the Brad Friedel one. You're picking someone based on what they were like at that time. They were linked, raw,
Yeah,
still plenty to learn, still need to develop, and obviously goes on to be a legend of the Premier League. Wins nearly everything you can win. Great captain, great leader, and I suppose it's whether you've got a crystal ball and you can predict that he's going to become this naturally, and that's maybe the gamble you take with
yeah.
Friedel, with John Terry. So okay, interesting. Well, I've gone for Daniel Van Buyten.
Okay.
You know the
Yeah, I
chap.
know him. I know him. Yeah,
So this is one of the players. I mean, younger listeners will have probably already predicted that we're going to have someone like Bas Doss in the team, and I can see he's not in my team but Daniel Van Buyten was kind of the Bas Doss of my era because he was linked every single window for about 3 or 4 years. Um, he was linked back in 2003, 2004. I've picked 2005 as the kind of the year that I'm going for. He was at Hamburg. There was a story written in the Guardian here. Now, like I say, he was wanted by Sir Bobby Robson when he was at Standard Liège. He moved to Marseille. Weirdly, then spent a season on loan at Man City, but he did cost Marseille £10 million, which is a lot of money back then. But as soon as replaces Sir Bobby Robson, then he wants Van Buyten to come in. Now, there's a quote here from Van Buyten that says, I've spoken to Graham Souness and he says he wants me and 5 or 6 others. He said that he wants to rebuild and that next season Newcastle are going to go for the Champions League at least. He also said that Newcastle will even try for the Premier League title. Now, the deal didn't come off. That obviously didn't happen. Souness went, left Newcastle under bad circumstances. But a really interesting in Daniel Van Buyten. He was a player who was a very good centre back. He'd played for some good teams. And again, when you look at his record post this link, I mean, he went on to win 4 Bundesligas with Bayern Munich and a Champions League. And I think, like I say, at the time of the link, he was maybe 25, 26. Coming to that peak era, Belgium international. I think the price tag was around about 6.5, £7 million. It would have been a good deal. Now, I don't know how he played at Man City. I think he only played 5 or 6 times, so he didn't
yeah.
really get enough chance to kind of lay down his marker. but he was a big fan of the Premier League, according to some other quotes that I've read. And I think, Daniel Van Buyten, would have been a very good signing for Newcastle United. And you look at what he went on to win, Bayern Munich. I mean, come on, one of the best sides ever.
Yeah, and also Newcastle would have been getting a bit of time where he joins Munich 2 years later, if that, and goes on to have an 8-year spell there. Yeah, good shout. I like it. Again, another one that I came across this morning and thought maybe. Yeah, I think in that matchup, we've got, as you say, you've got the rawness of Terry against someone who was maybe a little bit more experienced.
But I mean, this is the point. Like, we could actually agree at the end of the show that we take John Terry and Daniel Van Buyten. It doesn't have to be those two facing off. We could go for the experience of Van Buyten and the rawness of John Terry, because I often think about Steven Taylor and what a decent enough centre back he was, but imagine how good he would have been alongside a Daniel Van Buyten, for instance, or an older John Terry. Steven Taylor could have been in the England fold had he just had someone alongside him to give him that calmness, to give him that leadership. But he was a young man who actually had to step up himself and was often the leader on the pitch. And I often think that's not really a good good foundation for a young player. And we can look at Lewis Miley in the Newcastle side at the moment, and people are saying, well, what's Eddie Howe's concern? Well, the concern is that he's a 17-year-old lad being chucked in, and what you actually want is you want him to be bedded in alongside experienced players to help him mature, to help him develop. And I think, a raw John Terry alongside of Daniel Van Buyten wouldn't be the worst partnership. Depends who you've got next, though.
They could be the two we pick, but I don't think they will be. And it's very, very funny that you've just mentioned Steven Taylor, because he is at the centre of this next transfer rumour. Now, I'll give you some of the honourable mentions that I was going to put in before I made this last-minute change this morning. I nearly went for Jaap Stam in 2002. Now, he was coming to the very end of his career. He'd already left Manchester United, and Bobby Robson was trying to get him in from Lazio, but he was proving too much money. And then I very, very, very nearly went with Virgil van Dijk. They were linked with him when he was at Groningen for only 1.5 million. He obviously then went to Celtic, and then they were linked with an £8 million move for him before he went to Southampton. And Van Dijk was nearly the player I got until I stumbled across what could have been one of the greatest transfer stories ever if it had came off. And that was because in 2010, reports in Spain suggest that Barcelona are thinking of doing a swap deal with Newcastle for centre-back Steven Taylor in return for their agent star and captain, Carlos Puyol. So Sport in Barcelona said that Barcelona wanted 24-year-old Steven Taylor to play in their back four alongside Gerard Piqué, and were trying to get rid of Carlos Puyol, their 32-year-old captain, and sending him the other way. The only problem was Steven Taylor did not want to leave Newcastle for Barcelona in the Camp Nou, and the deal collapsed. Now, Carlos Puyol, opposite to John Terry, was obviously at the very end of his career, but still at 32, you would have been getting one of the greatest defenders in world football history, a man who's won World Cups, La Ligas, Champions Leagues, European Championships, you name it. I think when I saw that link this morning, he had to get in above Stam, he had to get in above Virgil van Dijk. So my second shout at centre-back is Carlos Puyol.
So I'm just looking here. So you said 2010 there. So 2009, 2010, he played 48 times, 27 times the season after that, 44 times 2011, 12, 22 times 2012, 13, and then 12 times the season after before he left and retired. He won La Liga 12-13, but that's a season he didn't play too often. Or no, he did actually. It's my mistake. He played 22 times.
Bearing in mind,
what else did he win?
This report that I was reading was April 2010. He then went on to win the World Cup.
And he won La Liga as well with Barcelona. So yeah, still plenty to offer. And around about that time would have been around about the time of Besson coming in potentially. So I often think about him and think what a classy operator he was, and if he'd been alongside someone like Puyol, for instance, what he could have gone on to achieve. I mean, that would have been some deal. The shirts he could have sold. Interesting. Puts my next one a little bit, I guess, into perspective in many ways.
You panicking now? You panicking after that one?
I wouldn't say I'm sorry. No, I wouldn't say I'm panicking, because again, this chap I'm going to mention, he'd done very well in the Premier League and then went on to play for. He won the Premier League at the season that he was linked to Newcastle, and then he went on to play for a further 2 Premier League sides, 2 of the biggest sides in the Premier League, having left one of the biggest sides in the Premier League. So, no, I'm not worried at all. The person it is William Gallas.
Okay, good shout. Good shout.
Linked in 2004, Newcastle United were confident, says the report, of signing William Gallas from Chelsea for just £9 million after selling Jonathan Woodgate to Real Madrid. This report was in the Independent. That season, Chelsea would go on to win the Premier League and FA Cup. I think basically at this time, Newcastle United obviously gotten rid of Jonathan Woodgate. So Boy Robson wasn't very happy. He needed a replacement in. Gallas wasn't first choice, but he wasn't first choice. I think Claudio Ranieri had implemented a kind of rotation system, so you weren't really first choice, but he still played 30 games, and Newcastle thought they could go in and get him for £9 million. It would have been a fantastic deal. He'd settled well into the Premier League, and then obviously went on to become a first choice regular under Mourinho before moving to Arsenal and Tottenham. I mean, he would have been brilliant. A very classy centre back, could score goals, quick, pacey, good in the sliding challenge, comfortable with the ball. £9 million would have been a bargain, and he would have been hopefully at Newcastle for 3 or 4 seasons. And I think he would have been superb at the centre. I mean, him and Van Buyten together would have been excellent. One man with pace, one man not so pacey, both good in the air, both leaders. I think that would have been a dream partnership.
Yeah, very, very good shout. So what year did you say that was?
2004. It was the kind of the when Newcastle sold Jonathan Woodgate, he was tipped as the replacement. And also that's a much more realistic option than Puyol. Would Puyol leave the temperature and the culture of Barcelona to move to Tyneside, as lovely as it is, as lovely as we like it? It's not for everybody.
Yeah, very, very good shout. Gallas, very good operator. Longevity was there. He obviously went on to do very good things with Chelsea and Arsenal and Tottenham as well. I mean,
yeah,
very, very good operator. That's a good shout. I tell you what, they've got 4 very good centre backs there. It's going to be hard to choose.
Some experience, quality. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the nod. Left back. I'm going to go first with this one because I'll be surprised. I'll be very surprised if you have anyone better than this. Okay. Now, also, ladies and gents, the rules that we've come up with, if me and Aaron agree on a name, that's a pass straight into the starting 11. I thought we would have agreed on 1 or 2 already, but we haven't. It's going to be interesting to see going forward in midfield and up front. But we are at left back. It's Mr. Leighton Baines.
Okay.
Premier League legend, Everton legend. Now, I've gone for when he was at Wigan. He'd had 2 quality seasons with Wigan in the Premier League. He was linked to Newcastle United under Sam Allardyce. Not Sam Allardyce's first choice, actually. His first choice was Mikel Sylvester, and a fee had been agreed, according to the Telegraph, for the Man United defender, but Sylvester rejected the move because Joey Barton had just signed for Newcastle United, and you had the how shall we describe it? The cigar incident with Dabo at Manchester City, and Sylvester didn't want to join a team who had just signed Joey Barton, so that deal went out of the window. And then Allardyce turned to Leighton Baines and he said it might be a possibility. He hasn't moved from Wigan yet, and we are in need of a defender. We'll see how that situation goes. He then moves to Everton, £5 million plus a million add-ons due to fees, appearances, and what have you. And sees out his career at Everton in an absolutely superb Premier League left back. I don't really know what else you can say. He was linked to bigger teams at his time at Everton. Manchester United were often linked to him. He was a top quality left back, a big pick in the fantasy football teams of back then. He was always in my team because he was great with free kicks. I'm sure he took the penalties well. Did he overtake David Unsworth at Everton in the penalties? He would have been superb at Newcastle United. And left back's that position that has plagued Newcastle United for so long. It kind of went Olivier Bernard, and then there was just no one after that, really. David Santon. David Santon was a man with potential, but it never really came to fruition. Jose Enrique took a long time, but eventually he moved to Liverpool. And now we have, Matt Target, Dan Burn. You know, the left back situation is maybe one that needs to be discussed today. But back then, Leighton Baines, given what he did at Everton, given how long he stayed at Everton, he would have been Newcastle's left back for a long time and would have set the tone. I see him as kind of a Trippier. He would have been the Trippier of then. You know, the leader, the one who sets the bar, set piece taker, likes to get down the flank, get the ball into the box for the strikers. £6 million, absolute bargain.
Yeah, look, I don't think I'm going to disagree with you on much there, and I actually think I'm going to already concede defeat because one left back was another position that I really struggled to pick. But also, I think Baines is a very good shout, and I think he's a very underrated shout as well. I think people will probably scoff at that, but actually, if you know your football, Leighton Baines was an absolute baller, and those free kicks, by the way, unbelievable. Right, I think that's a good shout, and I think that's going to be the first one we can actually agree on because I think that wins. Because my player is, and let me set some context to it, because when I say the name, you're going to think, how is Leighton Baines beating him? Mine's Gareth Bale, but this is 2009 Gareth Bale.
Yeah.
He had moved to Tottenham. He'd already moved 2 years earlier from Southampton to Tottenham for £5 million, but Newcastle nearly got him on loan very late in a window in 2009 because Sebastian Bassong had moved to Tottenham, and Tottenham under Harry Redknapp were looking to move some players out. Now, Bale, bearing in mind 4 years later, he ended up breaking the British transfer record and going to Real Madrid, but he was still very much an up-and-coming player at this point. He was struggling for game time under Harry Redknapp. He hadn't really hit the heights. He was playing left back and left mid. So, yeah, look, I think even though we're talking about a raw player here who went on to be one of the world's best at the time when he was linked, I'm not sure he beats Baines.
It's potential versus experience, isn't it? And I think you want that instant impact. Obviously, there's no predicting what Bale would have went on to do. And it's the same for many people. No one could have predicted maybe Leighton Baines becoming kind of a Premier League, as a legend too far away. It's certainly an Everton legend anyway. Yeah, I think Leighton Baines has got to win that one because he would hit the ground running and he would have just been perfect with Gareth Bale. You never know, the right manager or the wrong manager. Things could have been very different. Obviously, like you say, he's gone on to be one of the best players in the world. But that time we're talking a really raw youngster. Leighton Baines for me picks it surely.
Yeah, I don't think I'll fight on that one. I think that Baines' win.
There we go. Baines at left back. Then onto the right wing. You want to go?
Shall I go first with this one?
You go first.
I'll go. I made a late change to this one, but it's two very similar players, and it's two players that went on to do fantastic things, but at later stages of their career. But I think even at an early age, this player was going to go on to something special, and it's Cristiano Ronaldo when he was at Sporting Lisbon. Okay. 2003, Newcastle the season earlier had signed his Lisbon teammate Hugo Viana, who had just won European Young Footballer of the Year. They thought they were getting the gem of Sporting Lisbon's academy, and it turns out a year later they had to go back and try and sign the one that got away. So this is a report, 13th of May 2003 from the Northern Echo. Sir Bobby Robson seeking another Ronaldo. He's identified a potential soulmate for Hugo Viana in his former teammate Ronaldo. Robson's connections with the club have alerted the under-21 Ronaldo, and Newcastle are trying to do an £8.5 million deal to get him away from Lisbon in the summer. Obviously, a few months later, or maybe a month later, Alex Ferguson goes out, visits him, has a friendly with Manchester United, and I think they say the rest is history.
No, I've never been a fan of Ronaldo.
Oh, come on.
There's just something about him. I'm in the Messi camp all day long, me.
So am I, but come on. We can still appreciate them both, can't we?
I appreciate his longevity, but I don't like him. I've never been a fan. I've always enjoyed watching Messi, the way the ball sticks to him. I mean, different players. I mean, obviously, great goal scoring record, but I don't know. Never been a fan. But I can see why you've picked them because I think that's one of the stories everyone always tells us. And the nearly won, the nearly men, alongside a certain midfielder who I'm sure we probably both picked in the centre of the park. But yeah, I mean, okay. To be fair, it's going to be another one of these where it's experience
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
against rawness. I've gone for Dirk Kuyt.
Another one I looked at a lot.
Liverpool legend. Okay, because I so wanted this transfer to happen because there was just something about him, and every time Newcastle were linked to him afterwards as well, I was like really hopeful that he would become a Newcastle United player. I think when he left Liverpool as well, I was hoping they could maybe sign him. I know he was towards the end of his career, but I'm talking here the summer he signed for Liverpool. He was at Feyenoord. He'd scored 22 goals. He could play on the wing. He could play up top. There was interest in the Graham Souness the year before, and then he'd left. Roda came in. It was the summer of 2006. It was the Germany World Cup, and Roda went on record to say, certainly one of several players we are looking at, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in Germany. He then moves to Liverpool for a bargain of £9 million. And I think a lot of people, he was one of these people. Do I compare him to Miguel Almiron? That's probably unfair on Dirk Kuyt, to be fair. One of these players who never, I don't think, was universally accepted, and I think people did him a disservice because actually his stats were brilliant. His work effort was brilliant. Attitude cracking. He was a really good Premier League player, but he never seemed to get the plaudits I felt he deserved. But he won so much at Liverpool. And, I think he would have been absolutely brilliant in Newcastle. There was obviously a reason why they liked him and tracked him for so long. Just trying to find out how old he was when he moved to Liverpool.
Well, just while you do that, I've just been having a little look, and I've got a Chronicle article here from 2017 when Dirk Kuyt retired, and it's written by a certain Andrew Musgrove. I wonder whatever happened to him. And the first line is, "A club like Newcastle would be my dream," Dirk Kuyt admitted in the summer of 2006. The 25-year-old had just finished a campaign with Feyenoord where he netted 22 goals. Ironically, it would be Rafa Benitez at Liverpool who would win the race for his signature. Very good shout. I agree with you. Underrated. He did everything that you'd want in a right winger. He scored goals. He got assists. It's another good shout. And again, it's another experience against potential, isn't it?
I mean, that article there is getting loads of web hits because I've been on it several times this morning as well. So thank you for my count. It is difficult, and it's one of those where, again, with hindsight, we know what Ronaldo did. So many people watching this and listening to it will be saying, well, how can you discount Ronaldo? He's brilliant. I mean, we might even have, an argument that we can move him elsewhere in the team. We're not, if we agree on that, then fair enough. I mean, obviously, look, did Ronaldo hit the ground at Ronaldo? Did he hit the ground running at Manchester United in his first season?
He didn't hit the ground running in his first season, but I think when Sir Alex Ferguson's flying his entire team out to Portugal to essentially lure a superstar over, an 18-year-old that they signed for 12 million. I mean, back then, 20 years ago, 12 million pound is a lot of money. And yes, he might not hit the ground running, but he was certainly in that first team at Manchester United straight away. I don't know. It's that debate. It's which way you want to look at it. The player that I actually had up until very late this morning was actually Mohamed Salah, but it was a similar thing that Newcastle tried to sign him in like 2011.
That's a link I've never seen.
Before he was at Chelsea, before he was at Liverpool, he actually came out and did an interview, Salah, when he was at, I think he was at an Egyptian team called Contractors, and he said, Newcastle want to sign me, but I don't think Contractors will let me go, even though it's my dream to play in the Premier League. So he got bumped for Ronaldo.
Well, Sean Rice Phillips got bumped for me.
Yeah, I nearly went for SWP as well. I looked at him this morning. To be fair, I could have had a couple for a number of these positions. But left midfield, I went the opposite end of the scale, and I went for a player who was pretty much my first pick in the team, and that is an agent, Luis Figo.
Oh, hello. Where was this linked?
Well, this link here, I've got it right here. It's in the Irish Examiner of all places. Magpies linked with a Figo move. Reports suggest that Newcastle are leading the race to sign former World Footballer of the Year, Luis Figo. The Portuguese star is available on a free transfer after 5 years at Madrid.
What age? What age are we talking?
He was 32 at the time. And Graham Souness came out in a press conference and said, there is interest as far as Luis Figo is concerned, but we do not want to say anything more at the moment. Now, just to let you know what he did after Newcastle missed out on him, even though he was at 32 and leaving the best club in the world, he didn't slow down because he went to Inter Milan and had 5 years there, playing 105 games, and he won 2 UEFA Super Cups, 4 Serie A titles, 1 Italian Cup, and 3 Italian Super Cups, and then left under Jose Mourinho.
Wow, so he went on to actually do a bit of business as an aging star, because even back then, when you think about the few players played to that kind of age, right in today's game, we're very fortunate that we do get to see players play the Premier League until they're 36, 37, the highest level. Didn't really happen back then. So
32 back then was ancient, really.
yeah, that's actually okay. I'm glad you've read off the accolades there, because that's kind of swayed me slightly. Now, mine is probably the first big star, first big name, first one where you think, was that interest really genuine? But Newcastle United maintained it was back then. And it was Ronaldinho while at PSG. So I've gone for him on the left. Now, there's a few
Okay,
people
now,
will say, is that his natural position? Can he play as a 10? Are
okay.
you going to tell
No,
me you've
I
got him as
mean,
a 10?
you can play him wherever you want. He certainly played out on the left. He certainly played through the middle.
So
I
about
think.
just give him a little of a free roll and just say he has the ball, go and do with it what you want.
Well, we can save a bit of time here because I've got him in my 10 role.
Okay, let's talk about it. Well, I'll explain why a bit more left.
Okay.
So yeah, play him on the left, front of Leighton Baines, give him a free roll. Baines is good enough. He can just, he can sweep up any counters. He's at PSG, I suppose. Well, actually, if you've got him at your number 10, he's got to find a place in the team because we've agreed that anyone that gets in both our teams gets a free pass. So this is going to be interesting. But
Yeah.
look, did you read the bit where it was Lovren Robert and Olivier Bernard in a swap deal?
No, I haven't seen that bit. No, I've.
Are you talking Ronaldinho PSG or Ronaldinho Barcelona?
I am talking Ronaldinho leaving PSG to join Barcelona.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got that as well. I mean, for context, it's PSG having financial struggles, which seems a little bit bizarre, but it did happen back in the day. Yes, we've got the same era. I mean, look, just a fantastic player to watch. The ball's just stuck to him, entertaining. Okay, probably didn't do the defensive work, but what he did attacking wise was superb. Now, the story I read was Lauren Robert was offered plus, I think it was £3.5 million, which seems ridiculously a low amount. PSG came back and said, we want Olivier Bernard. Newcastle were prepared to do that. But Barcelona somehow, not sure how, somehow won the deal and he wanted to move to Spain. And he did so. Your reasons, Aaron, for having him in your side?
Well, I mean, look, he was just the bee's knees, wasn't he? Just an absolutely fantastic player. It would have been a time where you were getting him probably at his close to his peak, obviously just before joining Barcelona. Manchester United were really keen to sign him from PSG that summer. And look, I just think he speaks for himself. I had him out in my 10 because obviously I had Figo on the left, but you could probably swap them anyway. And just while I was doing my research on Ronaldinho and Newcastle, I stumbled across this brilliant Craig Bellamy story. Have you seen it?
I saw it, but I didn't click on it.
So Craig Bellamy, this is years after. Craig Bellamy was playing for Newcastle at the time when Ronaldinho was linked. But given an interview in the last couple of years, he was talking and he said, I remember there was once a debate. Ronaldinho was leaving PSG to go to Barcelona, but there was actually interest from Newcastle. There was a whole 2-hour debate on the radio in Newcastle as to how fans couldn't believe he could dare choose Barcelona over Newcastle. I was listening to it and just couldn't get my head around it. Is it a joke? Yeah, it wasn't. That was when I knew that this club thinks it's a little bit up further than it actually is. So Newcastle were punching above their weight back then. Obviously lost out at Barcelona. But there we go. There's the first pass in the 11.
Yeah, well, actually, the funny thing is, there's the story I've read, and it was actually in the Chronicle back in the day. This kind of puts into perspective the money in football. So, like I say, £3 to £4 million for Ronaldinho as a price tag. Then you have Ronaldinho's advisors have been told that Newcastle would be prepared to double his current wages of £19,000 a week. So one of the world's best players was on £19,000 a week back in 2004, 2003.
Yeah,
So
when you put it like
tells you
that.
how much the world of football has changed. But yes, he's got a free pass into the team. We just need to decide where he's going to go, but we'll decide that at the end of the show. Into centre midfield, then. Do you want to go first?
No, you go with your one. Ronaldinho was mine, so you can go for yours.
I've gone for Luka Modric. I think, we all know the story. Kevin Keegan claims he tried to sign him. He wanted to sign him. His agent, Modric's agent, was a big fan of Keegan. They came over at this time. Modric was at Dynamo Zagreb. This is back in 2008. Keegan is quoted as saying, "We tried to sign him. Modric's agent was a big fan of mine, and he was about to sign for Spurs. He hopped on a train to Newcastle, and all we had to do was sell the club to him." And then there was talk about certain scouts said, "I've seen him play. I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League." That was it, of course. And then Modric went on to have a fantastic career at Spurs and is still doing the business now at a grand old age of, what is he, 36, 37 at Real Madrid?
Yeah.
Modric has said in recent years that he's heard a few rumours that Newcastle were thinking about taking me there, like many other teams, but I don't remember anything in particular. People were speaking about it, and Kevin Keegan once gave an interview on the subject. I heard that at the time, though, no one told me directly that Newcastle wanted to sign me. There were some other teams that the people who took care of me would tell me about, but they didn't mention Newcastle. So Modric's kind of poo-pooed that, but we'll take Kevin Keegan's word for it. And again, I think this is one we don't need to say too much about, because, okay, he was coming as a player who'd never experienced the Premier League, but he was clearly a talented player and didn't take long to settle at Spurs. I don't think you need to say much about his talents and why he should be in the centre of that park.
Yeah, and it was one of those ones, isn't it? That's like the go-to story, isn't it? Of, Newcastle could have signed any of these players. Modric is always the one that gets talked about. Again, I think the only negative is that when was that? 2007, 2008?
2008.
So this is why just before he's at Tottenham. Look, very good player. There's no doubt in what he's done since. I mean, to be fair, even when he was at Tottenham back then, he was an absolute top player. Even when he was young, it's a good shout. I'll give you. And to be fair, it was one I very nearly had in as well, because it was the first one I thought, well, everybody knows that story. Modric, Newcastle could have been. Good shout.
Okay. Do you want to tell me your other option for the
Yeah, so
centre of the park?
my other one is a very, very similar story. It's Keegan. It's what could have been. But
I know it is. I know it is.
It's Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Of course it is.
The story behind it, according to Terry McDermott, is that Newcastle sold James Milner to Aston Villa, fully thinking that they were going to get Bayern Munich's Bastian Schweinsteiger instead. They sold Milner, and then Bayern turned around and said, well, if you want Schweinsteiger, you're going to have to pay 50 million. And that was that. Now, this isn't Schweinsteiger when he was a kid. This isn't Schweinsteiger when he was at his, on his last legs at Manchester United. This is prime 2008 Bastian Schweinsteiger. This is a man who won it all in Germany, won it on the international stage, played 120 games for Germany, 340 for Bayern Munich. One of the greatest holding midfielders we've ever seen. And Newcastle United could have had him, 15 years ago?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he very nearly made it into mine, and it's one of those, again, kind of you think, oh, what could have been? And I think the story goes, isn't it, like you say, like they offered a minuscule amount and kind of just offended his team and agent and representatives. I mean, yeah, it would have been fantastic.
Doesn't sound like Newcastle of old, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And it would have been fantastic. You would have built the side around him, and it would have been a great time. It would have been a statement, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously, it didn't happen. We know what happened in the years after, or the season after Newcastle fell into the Championship. Keegan left. It was probably kind of a nod to what was to come in the transfer market. Interesting. Okay, so he would be your defensive midfielder with Ronaldinho as your number 10.
Yeah.
Okay, my midfielder is, again, a bit more of a concrete one. It's Edmilson, Barcelona legend, Brazilian legend, won the World Cup in 2002 with Brazil. I think he was captain at some point as well. He won La Liga in 2004, 2005, 2005, 2006, won the Champions League in 2005, 2006 with Barcelona. He had won Ligue 1 with Lyon 3 years in a row, 2001, 2002, 2002, 2003, 2003, so on. Copped the league as well. Tremendous player. He could play at centre-back as well. He was predominantly a holding midfielder. He was the holding midfielder first choice for Brazil in 2006, but then he did his knee in, so he had to withdraw from the squad. Newcastle were linked the January after that, and he had picked up another injury. So this is kind of the downside to this pick. He's 30, 31, so he's coming towards the end of his career. He's had 2 serious knee injuries, but people think he's coming back strong. You know, he was in that Brazil squad for the 2006 World Cup. He's still at Barcelona. He's still got a lot to offer. Leader, he could be a captain, versatile, can fill in centre back, and he'd just be that defensive midfielder, that little ankle biter, just to protect the back four, sweep up any danger, stop the counters. Sam Allardyce went on record about him. Sam Allardyce loves a little natter, doesn't he? He's got a record about nearly every player. He actually flew out to meet him in Barcelona, and Newcastle thought they were going to sign him, but when they learned a bit more about his operation, they kind of held off. Then went back in for him. Barcelona were confident that he would make a full recovery, and I think he did make a full recovery. I'm not mistaken. I just think his experience here would have been unrivaled, and he would have offered Newcastle so much. But having said that, I've maybe overlooked that Modric and him together is maybe a bit too defensive. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I think the only thing for me is those injuries. And I think if you were talking about Ed Milson 4 years younger when he was winning the World Cup with Brazil in 2002, I'd be saying, yeah, you've got a really good shout there. But I don't know. But it's a very good shout, and it's a left field shout because it's somebody I hadn't anticipated. Good shout.
That's
Good player.
I'm not, you know, I've done proper research and I've gone properly into it. But yeah, I think it's, I mean, if you're asking me him over Modric, it's difficult because I say Modric's again raw. Middleton's got the experience. It's just whether he returns from that injury. I mean, without those injuries, like you say, I think he'd be a shoo-in because he was a World Cup winner. He was first choice for Brazil in 2006. Gilberto Silva counting his lucky stars in many ways because he filled in for him. Brilliant player. And that versatility as well is key because he could play.
Yeah, that's a really good shout, and we've got 4 very, very good centre midfielders there in total.
Right. Should we get the big boys now up top? This is where it all matters.
This
Goals is the currency. I'll go first. Shall I? I'll go first. Wayne Rooney.
Yes. Well, we don't need to talk about it because he's in mine as well.
What can we say? Wayne Rooney. Again, look, I know we've talked down a few choices because of that raw nature of these players. And, you know, Wayne Rooney was very young when Newcastle offered Everton £20 million to sign him.
Yeah.
But I think he was 19. But he was, you know, he'd proven himself. He'd been on the stage, hadn't he, for 3 years. He scored that goal against Arsenal at 16 and continued that, you know, that build up to this point where Everton were ready to cash in on him. They knew they were going to get a load of money. Man United were interested. Newcastle Chronicle reported 2004, August 24th, Newcastle United have warned Everton they will not increase their £20 million offer for Wayne Rooney. United have left the ball very much in Everton's court after Everton wasted no time in rejecting that bid. Now the word is that United will not offer a penny more for the most valuable teenager in world soccer at the moment. Not a fan of the words world soccer. That's awful, whoever's written that. Sorry, no disrespect, but world soccer. Football, come on. Anyway, there we go. Newcastle United insisted the bid was genuine. There's a little bit, was it? You know, looked like Man United was always the destined destination. But yeah, what a player, even at 19.
Yeah, he makes one of my 2, and there was many I went through. I'm just reading an article here from 2017. Wayne Rooney has revealed it would have been an absolute honour to have played for Sir Bobby Robson. There was interest, and I always enjoyed coming up against Newcastle. They just got beaten by a bigger and better team 20 years ago in Manchester United, didn't they? And that was such a shame because, as you say, yes, we're going off what Rooney was at 18, 19, but even then he was just
him alongside Shearer would have been the dream, wouldn't it?
You just knew he was going to go on to have this amazing career. And it might sound a bit stupid, but I actually still think Rooney, in the grand scheme of things, is criminally underrated by a lot of people. He was just incredible. So he makes it one of my 2. I know I've talked that I had so many, but I had so many for the
Come on, then
striker.
list a few off.
I've got them all written down here. So we had Henrik Larsson when he was at Celtic and Barcelona was linked. We had a 21-year-old Fernando Torres in 2007, Samuel Eto'o in 2005 before he went to Barca. Miroslav Klose when he was at Werder Bremen, obviously went on to be Germany's all-time World Cup scorer, and one that I would have absolutely loved to get in because I loved him at Manchester United, Ruud van Nistelrooy. Can you actually imagine if they'd signed Ruud at St James's Park?
I think he's underrated as well.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we've got a first off list, the other one that we both got. But I had Nicolas Anelka as a backup.
Yeah,
I
another
had a
one I
good
looked at.
Johnson. I had a good Johnson for me. I would absolutely love that. I think he's a properly underrated Premier League striker, proper workhorse. You know, him and Shearer together would have been a lovely little partnership. Nelka would have been interested in black and white as well. Who's your other striker? Who were you partnering up front with Wayne Rooney?
Well, I think after the name of the name that I've just listed off there and how good they are, we had to have a really special talent there. And I've probably gone for the most special of them all. I know you've probably gone for the more realistic route, but I've gone for Brazilian Ronaldo. Linked
Oof,
with
right.
Newcastle on the 10th of December 2000 when he was in Inter Milan, struggling with injuries. Bobby Robson said, Ronaldo, I'll get you back to your best in England. Come and join Newcastle United on loan for 6 months and we'll get you back to your best. Inter wouldn't allow it. I mean, can you actually imagine if the greatest striker of that era, before his injuries, had managed to come? So yeah, I've gone for Cristiano Ronaldo and I've gone for the proper Ronaldo, the original R9 Brazilian. Just reading this story here from the Northern Echo in 2000. Newcastle United boss Sir Bobby Robson is lining up a shock New Year loan swoop for Brazilian superstar Ronaldo. One of the world's most expensive players. He cost 19.5 million 3 years ago, but he's currently battling back from a career-threatening knee injury, and Robson wants to give him game time in England. I mean, can you imagine if that had happened?
It would have been unbelievable, and you would have backed to Bobby to turn the career around. I mean, he did it for Alan Shearer, didn't he? Alan Shearer not enjoying his time at Newcastle under Ruud Gullit. He'd lost something, that spark, and he's credited to Bobby with turning his career around. And I bet you're sitting there and thinking, there's no way that he's going to have picked someone better than Ronaldo. But you'd be wrong.
I think I know who you've picked.
Who have I picked?
I think you've picked Roberto Baggio.
I have. And I don't even need to explain why this man is probably the best player in my 11. Because when you're talking about a striker, when you're talking about someone who has achieved nearly everything that is possible to achieve, this is the example. I'll explain the context first before I go into his long list of honors. Now, there is a little bit of discrepancy with the facts of this story. The years don't quite add up depending on who you read interviews with, you know, whether it be Kevin Keegan or Terry Mack. But, you know, there was interest. What is certain, Douglas Hall and Freddie Shepherd flew out to Italy. Now, this, like I said, the seasons don't quite match up. One story says Juventus, the other says AC Milan. This, you know, one story is they went to sign him after losing the title. The other story is that they did it the summer before. You know, whatever happened, there was a journey out there. Newcastle United, you know, bold and brash as anything, rocked up unannounced, knocked on the door and said, we want to sign Roberto Baggio. And they were told in no uncertain terms to get out. He's not for sale. One of the best players in the world. You know, you can't afford him, sort of thing. And they went on to sign Alan Shearer, depending on the timescales. Terry McDermott in his autobiography said, I ended up going with Douglas Hall and Freddie Shepherd. We arrived unannounced at Juventus and knocked on the door. Douglas said, I'm Douglas Hall of Newcastle United in England. Who do I speak to in order to sign Roberto Baggio? Juventus official told him there was no one at the club and he wasn't for sale. So Douglas and the rest of us had to slope out of the ground and head back to an airport. Kevin couldn't believe it. Now, the story goes on to this, that a black and white shirt was left in the back window of Freddie Shepherd's car, parked outside of St. James's Park, and it was picked up by fans and the media, and it sparked everyone into a frenzy. So whether that was done intentionally or not, I'm not sure. But let me just read you some of the accolades of Roberto Baggio, because, of course, younger listeners might not be aware of him, might not know what he achieved. I mean, he achieved most of this before I was born, let alone Aaron. But just a tremendous player. 291 goals in 643 appearances, right? He won the Serie A with Juve and AC Milan. He won the Coppa Italia. He won the UEFA Cup. FIFA World Cup runner-up in 94, third place in 1990. And you're thinking, okay, he didn't win too much. But this is where you understand what a good player he was. He won the Ballon d'Or in 1993, second place in 1994, FIFA World Player of the Year in 93, third place in 94, fifth place in 95th. So you're talking about a proper operator. I mean, a real striker. One of the best strikers ever to grace the game. Silky, great touch, knew where the goal was. I mean, him in a black and white shirt under Kevin Keegan would have been something special. Whether it was up top with Les Ferdinand, whether it was up top with Alan Shearer, David Ginola laying on the crosses, Peter Beardsley, running into space for him, it would have been some sign. It would have been a statement sign. It was what Newcastle wanted to do to show people we're here, we mean business. They did it with Alan Shearer, whether it be a month later, a year later, they did it, but it would have been up there. It probably would have been a bigger statement maybe than Alan Shearer, because it probably would have cost a bit more than the 15 million they paid for him. But what a player. I mean, unbelievable.
I think you've sold it and then more there. I think, yeah, there's not much to deny. And also, this is at a time when Italian football was at its absolute pomp. None of this Premier League ruling at all. Italy was the place where the best players went. The stats speak for themselves, as you say. He won everything. I love the confidence of Freddie Shepherd and to just stroll in there and say, we want your best player when Newcastle United. And obviously we saw them break the world record with Shearer not long after. Just goes to show what the mentality was like mid-90s. It's very, very good, and I don't really think I can argue with it. And also, given the timing of Ronaldo and when I was looking to sign him, the injuries, I think you might have picked us on that one.
Right. Okay. So let's get down to business here. Let's get this team picked. 4-4-2. If we need to move players around, we can do it. Let's get it picked. You guys watching, listen, let us know either on social media, on YouTube, in the comments. Just let us know how you like the sound of our team so far, who you're picking. Give us your own team as well. So in goal, who are we going for? Brad Friedel or Pep Reina?
It's really difficult, is it? Because it is literally the opposite ends of their careers. It's do you go for the fresh-faced Friedel, who hasn't even played any minutes in Europe, or do you go for Pepe Reina, who's maybe coming towards the end? I think I'd still be leaning towards Reina, but maybe that's the bias.
See, I'd say Friedel just because it was Keegan who wanted him, and he just was good at this. With you always felt it was kind of Benitez ringing his mates up because that's what he had to do because he had nowhere else to turn. In an ideal world, he wouldn't have signed Pep Reina, but he didn't have any other option.
We'll go with Friedel because of what he went on to do. You can't deny the appearances he made in the Prem. We'll go Friedel.
Brad Friedel, 1994. Brad Friedel is the goalkeeper. Right back, it's Danny Mills versus Mario Melchiot. Same age, same kind of time.
It's much of a muchness, isn't it? I don't have any real strong feelings towards either of them.
Mario Melchiot, decent right back. I think Danny Mills was actually better than him. Not much, but I do think the levels
realise the fume that there's going to be when we put Danny Mills in our Newcastle team and he's next on co-commentary slagging them off.
Yeah, I know.
But no, we'll go Mills. England international. We'll go for it.
Just give them that little bit of an English core as well. Okay. Danny Mills, right back. So centre back. This is where it's going to get interesting.
I think I've got my two that I want to go out of the four, and it goes back again to something you said at the very start, and it's something I hadn't thought of, but I think it's the chemistry. Now, right. Carlos Puyol, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I can't believe I'm leaving Carlos Puyol, one of the greatest defenders ever, out of this Newcastle team. But bearing in mind he was 32, and yes, he was still winning things. Do we go John Terry, William Gallas?
You see, I like that idea and the chemistry. I get it. I do get it. And they were partners not long after both of them were linked, weren't they? But I suppose
Or do you go Puyol at 32 with a young Terry next to him or a young Gallas next to him
You'd
for that?
probably make no, it would probably be Puyol and Terry, I think, if
Okay.
you were going to do that. But saying that, I mean, I haven't checked it, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure you guys would let me know if I am wrong. But I'm assuming it was Gallas and Terry was the partnership for what Chelsea did. They won 2 league titles in a row.
I think I've got a feeling it was Carvalho and Terry.
Was it?
Ricardo Carvalho, I think, was one of Mourinho's first signings when he came from Porto. He brought him and Ferreira in. But Gallas was obviously definitely there, played a big part. Just don't know
Daniel
whether
Van
they were
Buyten,
like,
though. Daniel Van Buyten, good
I
player.
think Van Buyten's bottom of my list out of the 4, I think.
Scandalous. 4-time Bundesliga winner.
That just
Right,
goes to
okay.
show the quality of the 4 we've picked.
I think Terry definitely. You see, for me, Van Buyten's above Gallas for me. So the only thing persuaded me there is the chemistry argument. Pure though, Terry got the pace, but see, Terry never really had pace.
Mm.
So you bring in a Pure at 32, who didn't have too much pace before he was 32, with Terry who doesn't. Does that present
Look,
a problem?
Terry was my shout, so I'm going to leave the other second. I'm going to leave the second centre back parent to you. I'm going to let you choose it.
I would say Daniel Van Buyten because he could bring enough experience while still being young enough to make a real impact. However, the chemistry argument's a good one, and the PR just to see him in a shirt. But then, do you risk it becoming a Sol Campbell kind of signing?
But I mean,
Send
come on, that's very harsh. This is Puyol who went on to play for Spain at the World Cup
yeah.
months later. I don't think this was Notts
It's a
County Sol
stopgap,
Campbell
though.
level.
Is it a stopgap? It's a difficult one. Go on then. We'll say Puyol. We'll say
Okay.
Puyol and Terry.
I mean,
I'm
you
worried
can't
about that
knock
pace,
that.
mind you.
A back two of Puyol and Terry with Danny Mills sweeping him behind.
I'm worried about that pace, but then Van Buyten probably had the turning circle of an 18-wheeler, so probably didn't have pace either. Right, so there you go. We've got Leighton Baines in, no
Yeah,
arguments. Who does
we
he
don't need to talk about
gets over Gareth Southgate? He could, he
that.
could play centre back. Gets
He
over
was
Gareth
linked
Bale.
a lot. I did look at Southgate. He was linked a lot.
Baines over Gareth Bale. On to the right wing, we've got Ronaldo versus the Kite. Experience a little. Well, he hasn't got that much. I mean, he's 25, 26 versus Ronaldo and the raw ability. It's difficult, and I mean, as I said, I'm not a big fan of Ronaldo, but I'm gonna take that out of the equation, aren't I?
I think even though he was only 18 at the time, I just think he was still so good, wasn't he? He was so raw, but he was so good.
Right, we'll go Ronaldo then.
We'll
I
go
mean,
Ronaldo,
huge.
I think on the other wing, I think you've maybe got it right with Ronaldinho out on the left rather than
I
through the
mean,
middle.
okay,
Or unless you want to go Figo.
but you did persuade me. I mean, we've got to get Ronaldinho into this side because we both agreed on him.
Yeah,
Got
true.
to get him in somewhere. But you listed what he did at Inter Milan. Now the only question is the level of Serie A versus the Premier League. Could a
I don't know. This
32?
was what, just a couple of years before. I mean, he left. I think the season before Inter won the Champions League under Jose. I mean, Luis Figo, even at 32, just left the Galacticos. But also, I'm looking at those centre midfielders and think Modric and Schweinsteiger together would be a very nice pairing with Ronaldinho
Oh,
out on the left.
just discount my midfielder. That's fine. Right. Let's just leave the left for a moment because I think
Okay, okay.
we'll go in the centre. So
I mean,
Modric gets in, I think, without
yeah, I would
without
definitely go with
question.
Modric. That's fine with
And
me.
then it's Schweinsteiger or Edmilson.
Nielsen.
I think the injuries count against him. I think
Yeah.
had the injuries not been there, he would have been. I think he would have been in ahead of Schweinsteiger because he just got that versatility and he's just a leader. So we'll go Schweinsteiger, which then leaves Ronaldinho out on the left. Although for me, Figo Have we got enough experience in this team, given their ages?
It's
Terry's
a
27,
yeah, it's a
Pure
young team, isn't
32.
it?
All right, okay. Ronaldinho is 22, 23 at this time.
You've got to think that
Modric,
Terry's 21, Ronaldo's 18, Rooney's probably 18, Modric is young, Schweinsteiger's probably middle of the road.
so you might need Figo on the left then.
No,
You
we'll go
reckon?
Ronaldinho. We'll go. I know
Okay.
what Figo was my pick,
Close
but
run thing. It's a close run thing.
yeah,
Then up top, Wayne Rooney. And
Rooney
then
and I think Baggio. I think you sold it very well. And if it was just a couple of years either side for Ronaldo, even if it was Ronaldo at Real Madrid, I think he's such a shoe in. But I think
it's a
Baggio's
good
a
side. It's a good side. It's an attacking side with a bit of a backbone, at the back with Pure, Terry, Danny Mills, Baines. Yeah, I like it. I do think Figo up against Ronaldinho for that left wing is very close, but we said if we agree on a name, it has to go into the team regardless.
So
Wayne Rooney and Baggio.
just for everyone listening and watching, just to recap, a goalkeeper Brad Friedel, Danny Mills at right back, Leighton Baines at left back, Terry and Puyol, what a centre back pairing, Cristiano Ronaldo and Ronaldinho on either wing, Modric and Schweinsteiger in the middle, Rooney and Baggio up top, and a bench of Pepe Reina, Mario Melchiot, Daniel Van Buiten, William Gallas, Gareth Bale, Ed Mielsen, Dirk Kuyt, Luis Figo, and Brazilian Ronaldo.
The game changers on that bench. Whew. Winning the Premier League title all over
Cracking
this.
side, that isn't it? It's a cracking
Unbelievable.
side.
Champions League winners coming up. That was a lot of fun. It was worth the wait. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We certainly have. Let us know in the comments what you thought of our final team. I'll do a nice little graphic and I'll send that out as well. Share the podcast among you. It doesn't have to be Newcastle supporting friends. Sorry, it could be all your football supporting friends and family. And have a conversation. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on email and social media what you thought of our team, what team you would pick. A lot of fun, like I say. Thank you as always for tuning in. Hit subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, leave us a rating and review if you can on the podcast app. And we'll see you guys in a week's time. I will be all moved into my new house with a lot more grey hairs. I suspect Aaron will be back from wherever he's going with a bit of a tan, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
And we'll be hopefully recording the Monday show. Might not be in our new studio just yet, but hopefully on the back of a win over West Ham. Confident?
Look, it's Newcastle at home.
Let's not bring the mood down. Let's not bring the mood down. We've had a great episode. Thank you as always for tuning in, ladies and gents, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news.